Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you're here, and that if you're here on the stream, especially that you're after a little bit of a technical difficulty. So, welcome. It's Wednesday. This is the Daily Medicine transmission for November 24th. 2021. Oh, wow. First of all, welcome back, and a specific thank you to my subscribers and my regular viewing audience and community. Thank you so much for being here, whether you're live or on the replay on YouTube, BitChute, or Odysee. Your presence is so appreciated, and I just appreciate each and every one of you so much. So, wow, boy, oh boy, there is something really significant just happened between yesterday and today. And I can't tell you for sure what it is, and I'm not going to, because I think this is up to all of us to really come to on our own. But what I will say is that our moon is just barely coming into Leo right now. We haven't even gotten to the point where the blood is rushing to the head, and we are already, I think we're already kind of squaring off in some ways. There's a lot of fire in today's astrology. There's a lot of fire in today's reading, and it feels like that the heaviness that we talked about yesterday, pushing down of just our own energy, and a pushing down and a forcing down to the ground. I don't know, this observer, as we talked about yesterday, really had its benefit now. So the moon is moving into Leo as we speak. That means last night it was in opposition to Pluto, and also that quincunx to Jupiter. We'll talk about all of those things. And it was like whatever has been stirred past, right? Because we have K2, or the South Node, involved in Sagittarius now. It made itself very known. It made itself very known to be seen. And as the moon moves through Leo today, I think we're going to find ourselves feeling a very distinct sense of wanting to express ourselves, our own sovereign nature, individually. With so much fire in the chart, with the sun in Sagittarius, Mercury will move into Sagittarius today. Asteroid Vesta is in Sagittarius. There's a lot of fire and action, and with a Leo moon, there's a real tendency to express ourselves in a combust type of way. And it's not to say that is good, or about being aware of all of the different influences that come and meet in the center point of who we are, and how that influences what we do in any given moment. So if you feel like that things kind of maybe not erupted, but it was more of a opening, right? And things kind of did move up to the surface to be seen. And a lot of it was things that we didn't realize were still floating around, or still embedded deep within. And we have a real choice right now of what we're going to do with that. Intuitive part of the transmission, as we get into the astrology, there's some really very clear visuals and very clear trajectories in terms of how we can manage this energy, because it's very uncomfortable. And even though we've experienced, I think, a flipping, right? A intention flipping of the script in some ways, to allow ourselves to embody the other side of a situation in order to truly be an alchemist, okay? And that, in a sense, is also turning the wheel of fortune in a way that may be very, very uncomfortable to us today. And, on the eve of Thanksgiving here in the United States, I realize that this is the only place where the last Thursday of November is a national holiday here, but there is something very, very fiery and very powerful that is making itself. And what are we going to do with that? Well, that's really up to us. And it's important to understand the areas of your life these transits are happening in, to give you some insight of where you might see these things cropping up, how likely it is that you could react in a certain way. It's pretty remarkable. So I'm curious how people are feeling, if they are getting, it says that everything is still buffering. So I've been having a lot of connection issues this morning as well. So, and I can even see it on YouTube on the stream that it's just buffering. So if anybody is still here and is able to give me feedback about the quality of the stream, that would be great. Interested in is how people have moved from yesterday into today. So we're going to look at the Schumann resonance. We are going to see, it says that it's not buffering, but that's okay because it's recording. So for whatever reason, this becomes untenable in terms of viewing, which is a real shame because the live chat is really where we get so much input. But you can always comment later, and you can always see, it keeps telling me that it's buffering. So you can always comment later and catch it on the replay as the recording. Even if I need to take the stream down entirely and upload the recording onto YouTube, still comment on what's going on. So this is getting really frustrating because there's no reason for it really to have any kind of issues. So let me see if making some changes to what is connecting to my modem right now perhaps will make a difference. So I'm just going to keep moving on here because otherwise I'll just get hyper fixated on the fact that the stream, that it is buffering to the point where people are going to go away, which is a real shame. But here we are. So the Schumann resonance had a big blast last night, roughly around, I'd say 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the United States. Also so in the afternoon on the West Coast, it was a pretty significant one. So we're going to look at the Schumann Resonance chart, the very consistent patterns that we see where the amplitude goes up really high, the frequency or the pitch of the Schumann resonance itself drops down at the same time. But there was, the solar weather and the geomagnetic activity is very calm right now. So what is going on? What is happening? What came into our awareness that was very loud and made an impact on us? I would say that it's probably what is stirring unconsciously under the surface here in that connection with the South Node or K2. What has been our past karmic history. Also, too, the Sagittarian energy showing us what we have mastered in previous incarnations in terms of our soul's journey, right? Collectively, since we're talking about the current moment, it's still buffering, but you can still listen to you, no problem. It'll probably even out. I felt the fire coming through. I think old stuff is really trying to erupt from the unconscious even more. Yes, absolutely. It's a little bit, I would say it's more than a little bit disarming. There are certain things that were not surprising to watch come to the surface and very hard to hold space for, but recognizable, and you see that there is healing happen. Other things came out of nowhere that I was just like, oh, that's still bubbling under the surface of people in my life being directed at me, and trying not to take it personally, and especially with all this Sag energy, man. The thing about Sagittarius is because it represents the big picture, the broad horizons, and the understanding. There's a lot of honesty, sometimes brutal honesty at the expense of other people's feelings. And it's not so much that you don't feel. That's more of a starseed and a Gemini thing where you're disconnected from the emotional aspects. It's really just like, this is the truth. And I'm going to share this truth with you honestly, and how you respond to it is really up to you. The other case, it is the alchemy, right? And part of what I think is going on is that we've made a conscious yet unconscious choice, a subconscious choice perhaps, to maybe experience the other side of some type of dynamic, some sort of relational dynamic. So there is something out, you can point to things out in the mainstream or in your external life that may rest in your own relationships. I know I can speak to that. And it's something that needs to come up. It's something that is bubbling to the surface, or in some ways shooting up, kind of like magma from the center of the earth out of a volcano. that we realize it's still there. And so in some ways it's a gift because we get to see something if we identify as the silent observer and the witness and really, really observe what's happening and really be willing to, look at how it makes us feel, look at how other people are responding, and be honest with ourselves. A good look in the mirror and be honest with ourselves. And that doesn't necessarily mean that there's nothing that other people need to come to terms with on their own, right? But there's nothing we can do about that. We can't like force anybody else to see things the way that we do. We can't expedite their healing process for them. We just have to stay very firm in our own and be willing to look at ourselves. I think that's really where we run into problems ultimately, and how this will be when we look at the intuitive reading. You'll see that there is a lot of unhappy campers that are in outcome here, including ourselves, right? And with a moon in Leo, this is really setting up for a very interesting Thanksgiving here in the U.S., but just in general, a very interesting going into a weekend in general, and just really feeling like on the inside with the moon in Leo, right? We're really going to want to express, or we really feel ourselves, and we want to let it out, and there could be some fighting words. It's very fiery today, and when that wheel of fortune turns and it lands in a place that we don't like, or that we didn't mind to our own actions leading us to our response to this outcome, this is where very unhappy campers, and that is on the light side of things, how we could respond could be beyond unhappy camper and burning some things down. Not literally, but maybe. It just depends. And so you want to be careful not to just destroy everything good just because you, and this is a generalized we are experiencing something that is making us very uncomfortable. But that is part of the art of alchemy. Part of that is being able to be on both sides of the alchemical process and be able to experience it and to feel it and to put yourself in contrast intentionally so that you can learn something from it. So the potential here is incredible. But there are things coming up to the surface that we absolutely have to see that maybe slipped under the radar for a long time, or we thought they were gone. And now we have to see them for what they are and accept them and make the most out of this. I think that that's really important too. So let's see how the stream is going now. So I've shared already the feeling of urgency to deal with our parasites. That is incredible. It's a very incredible visual or imagery. I mean, we were having this conversation earlier this morning, and so that was exactly what I felt. A parasite, something stirring underneath that we didn't know was still there. It's attaching to us. There's a lot of demon entity type of energy that is still residing within people, and we are evolving and we're awakening and we are changing, but we have to actually have to see this for what it is and feel it as it's coming through us. And that has been very difficult even in the last day. So the mastery of South Node or K2, I felt a boundary incursion from someone and felt the fire, handled it honestly but carefully. It was a challenge. I think that again, that's a great way to consider it. Like, we've done this before. And the optimism and the honesty, sometimes brutal honesty, that comes through with Sagittarius is, the fire that burns with Sagittarius is the fire. It feels like the fire of Vesta. And that makes a lot of sense because also too, Vesta, asteroid Vesta, is in fact in Sagittarius today. And she is really, oh boy, I can't wait to get into the astrology. Let's just get into it because there is so much more imagery here than I could just talk at you about. So the first thing I want to show as we get into what's going on here is I want to show you the Schumann, just to give you an idea. And like I said, there was no significant geomagnetic activity. There was no massive solar flaring that necessarily happened. We are what we experience, though, seemed to mimic it in some ways. So where are we here? There we go. So here's our Schumann resonance from yesterday into today. So you see that there was a pretty substantial, uniform, across the board amplification last night into this morning, depending on where you are, and it came all the way up to 43. So this is the largest one so far. So not surprising to me that we also found ourselves like something erupting up and like spreading out and becoming very loud and literally amplified. And if we, as we usually do, we can scroll down here and look at the, there was a bit of a change in the quality in this area. It certainly did increase a little bit, but there wasn't that much variance. But of course, here we are again at the very same time, the pitch drops and then it comes back up and stabilizes for the most part. And we don't see another spike since that one last night into this morning, and things are pretty relatively calm now. So I do feel like that there have been a lot of earthquakes, and there's just too many to go over right this second, but you can always go search for that yourself. I can drop the link to that in the chat or in the description box to be able to see how much seismic activity has really been. And that really does coincide with like the energetic and the relational seismic activity, or the seismic activity within ourselves. Like things have to shift around in order for these things to make themselves known. And maybe that was your relationship. Maybe that was your immediate environment. See, again, it depends on where these are happening in your chart. So for Aquarius, for instance, just because that's my rising sign, I mean, I have 0 degrees Aquarius, so my descendant is 0 degrees Leo, right? The blood rushing to the head happening pretty much right now in the house of your relationships, right? And coming from Cancer into in the 6th house, right? Really testing and really bringing forward whatever needs to be brought forward in order to reconstitute ourselves and to purify and discipline ourselves, maybe be brought into awareness, especially with the moon there, brought into awareness about what and feeling, right? Feeling into what it is that we have to adjust or move around in terms of our daily activities, especially with our emotions, right? And so that was, that's just one way. So depending on where these things happen in your chart, you're going to find this blood rushing to the head and all of these connections to the sun and Mercury and even Vesta in Sagittarius today, these fire trines that on the one hand, they're purifying, aren't they? They are purifying things and allowing us to temper these contrasts down in order to create something new. This is the essence of Sagittarius, showing the past, our past karmic mastery, what we've done before, and allowing it to propel us forward. But it is not in and of itself the direction we are going. And so, so much fire today. Let's just look at the reading because it'll make a lot more sense and how important it is that we are staying kind of in the background, how unbalanced we may be at a core level here, and how important it is for us to trust. We don't know all of the pieces yet. That is really, really important. We could find ourselves really damaging some things if we don't just kind of continue to be in a state of trust and observation and almost blending in. We have the chameleon here because what we see here on this horizon is pretty substantial. So I think we really need to ground right now. So I'm going to invite everybody to just kind of prepare themselves for the bowl and the tone, just like that. So everybody, wherever you are, if you're sitting, you're standing, you want to get that root chakra, kind of visualize that with some roots coming out of that, extending down through your legs, down through into your feet and out the bottom of your feet or the soles of your feet, connecting into the Earth Star chakra that is connecting us to the planetary grid, our ancestral history on this planet, and just giving us a cord into our most very basic nature. So we'll take a deep breath in with our diaphragm expanding down and out. So breath in and release. Excellent. Yeah. Meditation was tricky this morning. A lot of information, but a lot of it took a lot. It took a long time to get to a place where I could bring this part of the transmission through without my own distortions. And that seems to be the biggest thing, is that the distortions are being seen very clearly as distortions within ourselves and other people. And so as our causal factor of the art of alchemy here is where we start, maybe, with all the Sagittarius energy, with K2 involved, and Mercury moving into Sag today. At that very last degree of Scorpio, it's very imperative that with Mercury, because it is our expression and our nervous system and communication and the way that our mind works, that we give ourselves or look for the outlet of some very potent energies of truth and the power of our relationships and our communion, letting it out in a way that is not going to destroy what is already there, because it's very powerful. The last degree of Scorpio is finding some sort of socially sanctioned or appropriate outlet for this very powerful energy. And you can use the power of the mind and Sagittarius, for instance, to release this tension in an imaginative and safe way, right? Which is taking the contrasts that are an inevitable part of relationship and of any kind, and choosing to temper them, to dissolve them down, maybe even to find ourselves in a contrasting position in order to really understand the big picture. And when we do that, we have the opportunity to make something precious out of something that is more mundane, which is the art of alchemy, right? It is the turning lead into gold and in terms of our own work, this is our own inner alchemy. So we've, in a sense, we've as the Sun and Vesta and even Mercury today pass over the South Node in K2, there is a very strong resonance in our expression, and also too with our mental expression, not so much our creative expression, because that did happen, but also too with our verbal expression, the stirring of these unconscious energies. But we are coming at it with it's not reversed, right? This is very intentional. It's very masterful. It is an art form, right? It's very easy to get caught in these very strong oppositional types of situations, or to be held onto by our demons, our parasites, that which really needs to be purged in order for us to move into the next very big cycle. And being in the eclipse portal, right? We're still in the space between the two eclipses, and the eclipse happening in Sagittarius. This is not easy. This is not easy at all. But what I do feel is that it's been, and we've accepted this. There's been an acceptance. There's been a conscious stepping into this for many starseeds. And a colleague of mine, just before I came live, had sent me a message letting me know that we were in dream space together. And what she shared with me in terms of the imagery and what she was experiencing was just like, oh yeah, we were back on the ship. So I do also feel like that part of the amplification was an energetic of getting louder in order to bring our awareness to the distortions and doing it very intentionally. And not everybody's going to approach this, and that seemed very to me even last night. Approach this with the same type of mastery and finesse that maybe we see in this card, but it's something that we intended to do, and we accepted the responsibility of maybe being in a contrast, right? So that's the other thing about the art of the alchemy. So our ability to solve and dissolve and combine, there's balance and harmony in motion with this card and with the art of alchemy in general, because it's fire. So it does imply that there is some activity here. So our ability to have the right mixture. So that means we have to put contrasts together, and contrasts that we maybe did not fully acknowledge were still there or there in the first place. And so sometimes this does signal that we need to leave a fixed position that we have found ourselves in and return to the mix after we leave that fixed position on a whole new basis. So we also, with a moon in Leo, it's going to be very difficult to walk away and do this, but it also is important that we see the potential for doing some real damage to ourselves and our relationships potentially, or, you know, in any sphere of life that we find these in. But there is something very intentional about leaving a fixed position and returning back. And so if you found yourself starting to see things in a way that that you hadn't seen, but deep down you know that those distortions have been there the whole time, this can be really useful to leave that fixed position, to come back and mix it up and do the alchemy from that perspective, right? To intentionally take the other side of something so that you can really feel that experience. And when you put them together, this is where you create something new and unique and very precious. Which with Sagittarius, you are talking about the meaning that drives society and culture, and our connection to each other as well. So from here, though, what we find in the current moment, we have the Jupiter card, the Wheel of Fortune, number 10. So this is number 14, and then we kind of go backwards in some ways to number 10. And Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius. And when we get to the astrology, we're going to take some time to look at Jupiter now in Aquarius, because it's going to give us a lot of insight on how to really be very disciplined and really think outside of the box and transmute a lot of these emotional energies that may have us really fiery and in battle mode in some ways, certainly in combust mode. So here's the Wheel of Fortune, right? This is karma in action. And destiny and destination, right? And the wheel turns and we don't know where it's going to stop, but where it does stop and our quote unquote fate is the result of what we've already done. And so we may not be able to control for where the wheel stops, right? That may be outside of our control, but how we respond to that. And also too, the circumstances that we have to respond to in general are still a result of where we've been. So regardless if it's a positive or negative spin to the wheel, we have to deal with the results no matter what. And we have to realize the facts. And so when it's reversed, you can really get caught up in a sense of fatalism, you know, like you don't have a choice, like you don't have any choice, or you know, your fortune changes for the worse, right? That's the other thing about Jupiter. I mean, we are literally talking about the Wheel of Fortune, right? There is no real way to predict where it's going to stop, and sometimes you can feel powerless, or your situation changes, right? Your luck changes, so to speak, when this is reversed. But what I do really feel is that we still made a conscious choice on some level to to be with these contrasts and to specifically allow the spirit to come in and stoke that fire stoke our alchemical fire, and we've chosen to be part of this. It's just that now in the present moment, I think that where the wheel has landed in relation to that is something that many people are like, ugh, I don't like this at all. Like, this is not what I wanted. You may find a drastic change in your circumstances just from yesterday to today, just based on some small thing, right? A conversation, an interaction, a thing that you see, or you hear, or a dream that you had, or just how you feel in the moment. The wheel turns and it lands in a position that we don't like, and maybe we're falling off of it like this character. The important thing about this card is to always find the hub, at the center, because it's never changing no matter how much the wheel is changing or turning on its own. But in this reversal, it does feel like collectively it's not a very sought after experience. And in fact, I think that many people will be like, I don't like how this has shifted and changed at all. And this, like I said, there's a range of this, and it really depends on how in tune you are to this art of alchemy that is being brought forward with the Sun and Mercury especially, and Vesta too. That was not that long ago that asteroid Vesta was also in conjunction with K2. So there's a lot of our past. And of course, we know that the eclipse that's coming is all about purging that shit out of us and out of our situation, because it will come with us into the next cycle, and will darken that cycle if it's been unrealized. And I think that we're finding that that is the case in general right now, and how we address this is really up to us. So there is a sense here of being unbalanced, things being unfair, right? In its reversal. This is where we are drawing our power from, and where we find ourselves subconsciously rooted. Maybe this is just what's going on in our subconscious right now. It's out of balance. We don't think that it's fair, or that we're embroiled in some type of difficult situation that is causing us to lose clarity and power. That's the other thing too. That wheel turns and it lands somewhere that is just like, no, I don't want that. And all of a sudden you are losing your clarity, your power, you're losing balance, and you feel like that you are just completely surrounded by a situation that sucks. So one thing that we can do in this situation is take action to untie it, right? Maybe you need to acquire good counsel. Maybe this is legally. Of course, when we're talking about Libras, the scales of justice, but also too, like, talk to somebody that you trust, that maybe is going to really listen and reflect back to you what you're saying, and give you insight that you need, that we all need, in order to come to a conclusion that is going to activate our highest potential, rather than have us getting sucked into a power struggle. So it's important that we seek justice and not revenge when people hurt our feelings or point out things that we didn't want to address about ourselves. It's or even if you are just on the other end of somebody else's projection that they haven't dealt with, it's really easy to, especially Sagittarius, to really just, not so much revenge, but just to be brutal with them, brutally honest, because it's about the big picture. And if you're not fitting under the umbrella of the big picture here, then we'll just let you know, right? And so that's the downside of being Sagittarius, is the self-righteousness and the judgment. So it's very easy to let that inform our actions or our perspective. And we want justice. We just want balance, and we want balance within ourselves. We don't want to create more karma by attacking somebody that is doing nothing more than showing us their own distortion, or showing us our distortion. It has nothing to do with them necessarily, because at the end of the day, they have to live with their own distortions until it really does encroach on our own free will and bodily autonomy. And that's something to keep in mind as well, as like a larger macro thing. But ultimately, I think there, is something substantial that is throwing us off balance. And I mean, it is literally turning of the wheel that's like, oh God, I am not where I want to be or thought I was. And now I am in an unjust situation potentially. And you can, again, micro to macro, there are so many ways that you can look at this, and many people are experiencing it in their own way right now. So, but where we are in terms of our conscious attention and awareness, here's our One of Scrolls, right? This is going to be really important. We are on track. Okay. Remember, we saw this yesterday. This was a guide. This was a guidance point that came through. This was a gift that was surrounding yesterday. So now it's at the top of our awareness. We are on track, right? And decisions need to be made, choices need to be made, and we are going exactly where we need to, despite the fact that the wheel has turned and it has left us falling off the edge here. We are actually completely on track of where we're supposed to be going because we decided to participate in this process. And so keeping our awareness here and not forgetting that we've made a decision to get on this train of awakening process, ascension, whatever, however, just coming into your highest potential, to be part of the evolution of humanity. These are all important things that we've chosen, right? We are on track. And part of that, again, was to participate in this art of alchemy. And sometimes that does mean dissolving down into our base constituent parts and purifying ourselves before we even come into combining back in together to create something new. But ultimately, what I'm seeing here is that our awareness, our conscious awareness, and where we can really release our power is the fact that we're on track. And maybe that needs to be expressed to other people so that they realize that everything is as it needs to be. And at a soul level, that we have brought ourselves to this point in order to purge out what needs to go, right? And as you see the rattlesnake, right, this is a pretty clear indication that this is an initiation process into being a healer. And what's the best, to be a healer, you have to be truly compassionate. And to be truly compassionate, you actually have to be able to experience suffering. And so maybe experiencing your own suffering, experiencing somebody else's suffering as a result of their projection, of their distortions onto you. You can keep your boundaries, but you don't have to go into battle mode about it when you realize that it actually has nothing to do with you. Or maybe it does, and you realize like, whoa, I needed to be checked. These are all ways that this expresses itself. But ultimately, what this ends up, the Princess of Wands is reversed. She is not happy when she's like this. She can be very vengeful. She can be very dominating. She can be very arrogant and theatrical and very unstable, right? When she is reversed. It's Venus in the fire sign. So, here's Vesta right here. And we'll go into where Vesta is today because she's kind of our saving grace of giving us some clear perception of what otherwise is stirring under the surface. It's definitely stirring. And every time something rolls across K2 right now, it stirs really vigorously. And if we don't have a clear awareness of what that may be, we think we are this, or we think that we are in the right. And with the moon in Leo, this is a pretty high energy combination today. So I would expect that without really heeding some of this guidance, especially being so unbalanced and feeling like things at the root of it are very unfair and unbalanced, this is where you could very well end up is just this kind of, like I said, very dominating, very theatrical, superficial, arrogant type of just like, oh, well then, if I can't have it, then nobody can. Or if I can't be happy, then I'm just going to burn you to the ground too. Like this is, so it's something to keep in mind here. And I'm not saying that it'll be like this for everybody, but we are looking at a snapshot of the energetics right now, and it doesn't look good. It looks very combust, like I said. But we do have this guidance. Number one, there are things that we don't fully know yet. And so we do have to keep in mind that, we have to trust where we are. And if we push too hard for something, we might push that outcome away. Perhaps we want to we want, perhaps we want to come to resolution within our, in a relationship, for instance, or in a situation. And we want somebody to see it from our perspective, and we're seeing it from their perspective, but they're not necessarily seeing it from ours. And it seems really unfair. And so you might push, and you're just going to push that outcome away by just pushing too hard. And so it's also important to let go of the urgency of trying to figure the situation out or have all of the information right now. So the deepest knowing will be revealed when it needs to be, right? And there's a certain amount of trusting this up in the air right now when it comes to things feeling very unfair. I mean, you could really get into a serious battle right now to try to flip this around because it feels so out of balance right now, and end up in this position where you act like a petulant little child. So in many different ways, but we also, I think it's really important that we acknowledge that there are things that haven't, we can't do anything about others that haven't gotten to this position yet, as much as we want them to see that they're taking their own demons with them into the next cycle, which is going to fare very poorly for people for this eclipse cycle, whether they like it or not. So you can, you can be conscious and aware of it now, or throughout the eclipse cycle of the next 6 months, you can just get burned so badly. So the chameleon, as well as part of this, is about, staying in the background, being the silent observer, right? And along with up in the air, rather than being conspicuous, attempting to direct the course of the events, attempting to force things to balance, right? Through maybe argument or any kind of interaction. I think that what we're seeing here is a really strong, slow your roll, take a step back, kind of blend in a little bit, like be the observer, because what we have at the top here is, again, we have the rattlesnake, as I said before, presently going through an initiation to fulfill your purpose as a healer. You're on track. This situation that we're all experiencing right now, whatever is happening for each of us at this time, is exactly where we need to be. And we've asked for this. We've asked for this collectively and in our own lives at a soul level in order to really be initiated into a healing role, and a healing role for the whole planet, and a healing role for all of humanity across time and multiple timelines, and across all of our ancient history. We have to experience suffering in order to truly be compassionate to other people. And so we are on track, as much as it's uncomfortable. And this is a great place to put our awareness, because this is now moved into our energetic, axis of power. As yesterday, this was just starting to come into our awareness. It was just like off in the background, like you got to make a decision. You have everything. It's a matter of getting on the train. And that's what we did. And then we have to go through the process of alchemizing the whole situation, which means we have to purify all of the elements before they can truly actually alchemize the situation. Oh, I knew this would come out. I mean, in my meditation, as I was shuffling, I already knew. I was like, we're going to see this card today. We're definitely going to see it. So again, looking at ourselves in the mirror, looking at what if we're this person, right? And realizing that we have been completely self-absorbed, or especially in this situation, or we are on the other side. We're part of the entourage that this person doesn't see, right? This is about taking a good long look in the mirror and being very real with ourselves, also being real with ourselves about the other people that we are surrounding too, and what their view of their own ego is. And again, when you can really see how lonely and destructive this actual perspective is for other people, again, you realize that when people project their distortions onto you, it's a reflection of how they feel about themselves and their fears, their insecurities. And so narcissism, the thing about Leo in the 5th house is that if the 4th house is corrupted or distorted in any way, right? If there is a distortion in our own personality integration as a result of the integrity of the vessel that holds us in Cancer, right? So if there is dysfunction in our family, in our home life, if there is a crack in the vessels, so to speak, there will be distortion. And that distortion, as it moves into Leo in the 5th house, if it's there, this is where the narcissism comes in terms of the ego consciousness expressing itself in the 5th house in Leo. This is where you really start to see the emergence of a devotion of our passion to our higher self and to service to humanity and to others, or you see that the distortion that happened in the emotional life and the integrity of the vessel that holds us and our vulnerability. If there is any structural integrity that is compromised there is distortion, and we take that distortion with us, and this is where we express our service to self. And this is a big part of what we are seeing here. But again, it's emotional, and that's where the moon is right now, the moon in Leo. So if we're looking at ourselves in the mirror, this is a great time to do some very very deep inventory, right? If we are on the other side of this and seeing that this person only sees themselves in the mirror, we have compassion for them. We realize, set some boundaries, right? That's what Cancer is all about, is boundaries. Everything about the Cancerian archetype is boundaries, right? This is why it just kind of amazes me that, people on, in certain spiritual circles or doing this type of work will just talk endlessly about boundaries and how important they are to the empath. And then when it comes to larger contexts or larger macro situations, that all goes out the window, because then they feel like that is somehow an affront to other people. So it's just important to understand what you're talking about and within yourself, right? If you're in a position where or being a voice, that's important too. But what I'm seeing here is that we're really a lot of personal inventory that's happening in a lot of different ways right now. And again, we're totally on track. And part of this is where Mercury is making that transition from Scorpio into Sagittarius today. And we can give ourselves an appropriate outlet for this intensity that we have experienced and discovered through all of our time in Scorpio, and especially through our communication. And I think also too, just knowing that we are on track, and knowing in a very mental way and speaking to ourselves perhaps that we're on track, and to realize everything that we might be experiencing right now is in fact an opportunity to take personal inventory and to really accept that it's an initiation in some ways into being a healer, which is about just understanding what compassion really means. And that ultimately started with the art of the alchemy, because you have to be able to see both sides, experience both sides, be both sides in order to understand what's going on. And I just know that it's going to put us in a place that we didn't anticipate or that we don't like. And like I said, it could really lead to that petulance and just being a you remember? Yeah, I mean, I just got a vision, a really strong mental image of the, I read the book first, is Carrie, right? And if you've seen the movie, and they named a new movie of Carrie, right? When she finally got pushed to the limit, she burned them all down, didn't she? This is Venus in the fire signs, right? When she's uncomfortable, when she has been insulted, if her sense of comfort and sensibility has been affronted in any way, this is where it goes sideways. So, but I think we're okay. I'm just letting you know that it's really, really strong right now. So it's a devious day. The rattlesnake, the initiation. I had to confront something that challenged my wounding, but in a new way, using the South Node as experience, but tempering it with what I've learned. I actually had a very, very similar experience, and it has been plaguing me since last night, and I really had to do my own personal inventory in order to really be an adult about this situation, and also not to completely, got all that sag, not to completely discount myself either, right? I had to be very real about the whole distortion collectively. So I am with you 100%. And I know that we're fellow Sag people. So I think that we're really just getting the brunt of it right now. That is for sure. So pretty powerful reading. I hope this resonates with people because it's pretty substantial right now. So let's look at the chart actually and see where things are right now and get an idea of what to expect the rest of the day. Oops. And then coming into tomorrow as well. That is, because I'm not going to do, I won't be doing, why won't you close? I won't be doing a transmission tomorrow because it's a holiday. So I want to take some time here to really look at the astrology and be aware of what's going on. So here we are with our astrology chart for today. I'm going to minimize this here too. Okay. And I do feel like the Schumann Resonance, something happened that really was like an assist. It was like an assist, right? It was a big assist in a lot of ways, and it was just like it just blew things open. And right at the time that happened was right about the time that I was like kind of in the throes of like, I can't believe this is happening right now. Like, are you really saying this? Like, I didn't realize that you were still hanging on to this from, years and years and years ago, and not feeling like I could ever give voice to my perspective without sounding like I'm trying to defend some terrible behavior. It's a messy situation. Devious day. I totally agree with you, Emily. Very devious. So here's our chart for right now. So as of right now, I mean, look, right now, the moon has just now come into Leo as of this moment, right? 0 degrees, 0 minutes. Wow. So I think it's important that we back up and take a look at, number one, what happened last night astrologically when the Schumann had done its big spike. So let's look at it here, because what we're going to see is that the moon had just come off its trine with Neptune before this happened. So the moon was in a trine to Neptune. We talked about this yesterday, how there was an opportunity to really offer some level of performance. Oh, wow. And it definitely felt like a performance. That's for sure. A performance of that will give some sort of emotional reward or give some sort of recognition to us in this performance. And we're not performing for ourselves. We are performing as a channel for the values of the family, of that tight-knit group, of that spiritual community, or that whatever that container system is for us emotionally. We gave it a voice. And in a trine to Neptune, it was supported by the diffusion that we've all been experiencing into a situation where we're really just able to feel into all of the goodness and the positive and the freshness of what is coming that is new, right? And it's all this inner diffusion and potentially kind of hiding from ourselves in some ways, or hiding from other aspects, because what we are focused on primarily is like what feels good about where we're going, and trusting that we are kind of, and I keep doing that because the Sabian symbol for this degree of Neptune is like this little kid is just petting this lamb and being watched over by like an older like guardian, and the little kid is just petting the lamb, and that's it, right? And the lamb being the reference to Aries. And so we're coming into the last decan, or the last 10 degrees of Pisces, which is all of that diffusion and all of that lack of energy, or like lack of boundary, right? As everything is dissolving into its source, it starts to come back together. Like we're starting to come back into where we're going next in that last 10 degrees or that last decan. So, and by the way, the last decan is the 10 of Cups. So that 10 of Cups keeps coming back around into my awareness awareness right now. So right before that Schumann happened, there was this performance that we each were able to give of where the essence of that familial matrix that we're coming from, that is really responsible ultimately for how we feel about ourselves and our own sense of vulnerability, our self-esteem, our character. It all comes from the Cancerian area. So there was definitely some type of performance. And maybe we are trusting a little bit too much of what's coming. It never really occurred to me until this trine with the moon and Neptune that it was so emotional and so expressive, but also too that we could be so diffused within ourselves that we don't actually see like what else is happening around us. But I do get the sense that there is a guardianship of what's happening, and that became very clear last night into today. My own dream state, what was shared to me with with another person's dream state, and how it was interactive, and that whenever we're in. For me, whenever I'm like in a classroom setting or on a campus or any kind of collective learning setting or even a performance in general, that's happened too. That's my cue that I'm on the mothership basically. And this, I think that we all got some measure of like instruction, or we were brought back for a review, or something was offered to us in order to make this leap. And it came, and the Schumann Resonance was a big part of it. So anyway, so that is what happened. Then the Schumann spikes, right? And then we come into the rest of the evening, into just as we switched over into the midnight. So still last night on the West Coast, and early this morning, late last night, we find not only the moon was in a quincunx with Jupiter, which I said we were going to talk about, but is in a direct opposition to Pluto. Now, this degree of Cancer is about when you are stable and stabilized, right? The root system of who you are is very stable and holding you to the world around you to the point where you can eventually fully be yourself, which is what Leo represents. There is, when we are willful towards positive outcomes, for instance, sometimes that willfulness will allow the descent of something more than just ourselves to come in and endow us with something that we normally wouldn't have with us. Now, in direct opposition to Pluto, of course, this is going to be a big challenge to what is being destroyed and destroyed at a collective level in Capricorn, when we talk about institutions, when we talk about the structure that provides us a sense of power, right? There's that Four of Discs, the power and the stability in a collective sense, right? Our fortress that is around us, and the geometric fractal reality that makes up everything that we that we rely on in terms of reality. As Pluto is destroying it, this opposition to the moon is just like, well, I can certainly counteract that just in my own self-esteem and my own willful character, right? This was a big challenge to Pluto. And it happens every month, right? As the moon comes around and is in this opposition to Pluto. What made it interesting was the quincunx to Jupiter pretty much at the same time, within a short amount of time. It went from that quincunx to Jupiter to the opposition of Pluto. And Jupiter, it's important that we talk about Jupiter because it is the ruling planet of Sagittarius. And like we see here, we have the sun in Sagittarius. If we pop over to this chart real quick, we'll see too that it's not only, it's K2, obviously, the sun, we have asteroid Vesta, and Mercury today will move into Sagittarius and will be in a direct trine to our Leo moon that is going to be up here. This is going to happen very soon. So there's a lot of Sagittarius energy that we have to address. So what we are looking at Jupiter as the ruler of Sagittarius, I think is going to give us a lot of information in what's happening. So this is about transmutating our emotional energies. And in Aquarius, it's not about us personally, right? That's Leo. Aquarius is about the dynamic of the collective as its own organism, as its own entity, as the power that moves through a collection of individual sovereign people. And Jupiter being the advocate, being the representative, being the defender of the upper realms, right? Jupiter was not or Zeus was not really interested in what humans were doing. Jupiter's job was to defend the heavens and to defend the upper realms. And so is also doing that with Aquarius. It is defending and advocating and providing resources and expansion to the social organism as a whole. And it is really advocating and giving us a lot of resources in order to transmute our emotional energy. So to be the water bearer means that we are using the water or the emotional energies as they're being utilized, they're being harnessed. We're able as a society to hold the intensity and the volume of emotional energy that is coming through us. And the thing about a moon in Cancer is that it's all emotional energy, and a sense of like, I can do anything, right? I can do anything. And in fact, if I'm willful enough in my approach, I will be endowed with something outside of myself or with, from below, right? But it's the idea that the containment system that has allowed us to develop emotionally is strong enough that we can allow for this endowment to come in. The quincunx, or the need to adjust ourselves in that moment, is that we have to go beyond that. It's not about willfully exerting ourselves and our own emotions at that moment, especially with the moon. And that's not to say that that's completely inappropriate. It's a quincunx, right? We have to adjust ourselves. We have to alchemically transmute what doesn't fit together very easily. And so how do we allow for this willfulness to open us up in order to receive a lot more strength at the same time that we're being supported and given resources in order to be able to transmute that energy for the sake of the collective, right? This is where I think it started to get really kind of like, I'm going to have my way, in my own way, individually, emotionally, in my own feelings, and catching a lot of resistance from these bigger players of Jupiter, and especially Pluto. Is just like, well, it's not just about you. It's about the bigger picture and what you're going to do with this willfulness and this endowment in the face of these things. That was a pretty big message. And I think that our dream state probably gave us a lot of information about how to make the most of those two transits. So when we move into Mercury, and then where are we at here? So now, and that was kind of the end of it, right? There was some minor transits that would happen between then. But now we find ourselves with the moon in Leo, and Mercury, as of just now, has just moved into Sagittarius. So something to consider here. Mercury is at its detriment in Sagittarius. It is at its weakest point in Sagittarius. Now think about Mercury, right? It is the realm of the mind, our ability to harness and gather data and information, our ability to analyze and be able to see the forest for the trees, right? The ability to put things where they belong. This is like a Virgo energy, right? Because Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo. So we're working not only with information, but we're also analyzing information with Mercury. Mercury in Sagittarius is at its detriment because it's in the sign opposite of its rulership, which is Gemini. Mercury doesn't want to synthesize material. Mercury can't play in the realm of ideas and move back and forth and all over the place when it has to actually alchemize them, synthesize them, and come up with something. Will start to weaken in during the transit during Sagittarius. Now, what Mercury in Sagittarius can do for us is can give us some detail-oriented focus on something that is often just big picture, right? Sagittarius is big picture. It is the broad horizon. It is the full range of all of the experience that gives meaning to us. And so Mercury is not interested about meaning. Mercury is interested in information and data and using the power of the mind for manifestation, but not engaging the fire underneath in order to synthesize these things. That is Jupiter's job, right? Jupiter is the defender of the upper realms. Mercury is like, I want to play in the ideas. So our mental faculties will start to be challenged in a lot of ways as Mercury starts, really going through Sagittarius right now. So there will be a Cazimi very soon with Mercury and the sun, obviously, that's going to really illuminate these types of mental journeys, I would say, and that's something to just watch out for. We'll get more into that with the astrology, the weekly astrology that we'll do on Friday. But you'll see that the moon in a trine to Mercury in this moment is like the blood rushing to our head, right? With Leo, it's just like we're getting, you know what I mean? Like this is the first moment that the blood is pumping, that the passion is starting to be released, and it's going to be within our emotions, right? This is why I say it can get really combust. And in terms of what we have to say and how we feel, especially with a trine to Mercury in Sagittarius, which is the meaning underlying all of our struggle and the friction and ultimately the alchemy and the understanding, but it's the meaning that underlies it. And so I think there's a real strong potential here in the moment to also we have to be very careful here. I mean, or not, right? The other thing too is you just let the flame burn and burn it all down, and then you'll get to. We're all going to get there eventually. It's the matter of how we get there, and if we stay in one piece, and if our relationships survive the process. But this moment, this trine here, is able to, in some ways, give some action and some transformative quality to our emotions and our mind, but it also could very well lead to us, fighting words. Definitely fighting words that are stemming from our passion within, how we're feeling within as well. So that's something to look for today. And then the moon will trine K2, right? It'll come into trine with K2 at the 2nd degree. And so again, this can be infectious, right? We can really, that stirring of unconscious energies where K2 is sitting in a trine to a moon in 2nd degree of Leo is like, it's one thing for the blood to rush to the surface. It's another thing entirely for it to be infectious and to spread to everybody that we touch. That's, if we are, again, this stirring and the fact that it can move through the collective easily and almost subconsciously, I think is important, but we have to be aware of it, right? We don't want it to necessarily, cause destruction, or certainly keep us in our past too, right? The K2 aspect is pushing us forward, right? We can't get caught up in that being the direction we're heading. And the direction we're heading is distinctly in Gemini still, right? This is where the North Node is. And then we come into this really nice trine today with the sun in Sagittarius. So the 3rd degree of any sign is where you find your first real stable representation of the two contrasts coming together, right? Just like Sagittarius. So the thing is, if we can see and we can express ourselves and find our expression through this conflict as a ritualization, right? As a way to practice the art of alchemy at its very inception, the very beginning, right? If we can see it as a chess game, I know that that's a loaded image now, but in terms of Sabian symbols, this is where we're at here, is the transcendent ritualization of conflict, like being able to sit at the chessboard and see and express yourself through this interplay. If we can do that, and we can find, and we are willing to feel a sense of independence. And when I say independence, I'm saying that we in this moment feel our sovereignty in relation to everything else, right? And when we can do that in a trine to the sun, it will reinforce our ability to sit down at that chessboard and really find our voice through this conflict as a game. And I think this is really, really important, but it only really is going to be, I think it's only going to be best expressed or utilized in the best way when we are able to acknowledge and feel our own sovereign nature, that we are independent from any of the distortions that are projected onto us about what we should or shouldn't be. And when we can have some confidence here, because Leo is all about confidence, if we can have some confidence that we feel about ourselves, then we can approach this moment and find our voice through something that is really about seeing the power and the ignition of the contrast that Sagittarius ultimately has us coming to understand. So in this moment here, we can actually take that confidence and apply it to and find expression and find balance. You know, a trine, a moon and a sun trine like this is really saying that these two aspects can support and provide a foundation. And this is the yin and the yang and the masculine and feminine, how we feel and what we say about it, right? And so we also don't want to get caught in this like overconfidence, narcissistic, ego-controlled feeling that then gives us an inflated sense of confidence to sit down and just battle it out, right? We don't necessarily want to take it to that level. And that's also a very strong potential today. And, you know, what happens the rest of the day is all of these connections to when we get to what I want to show you in particular is, see, when the moon gets, this is tonight, the moon will reach 4 to 5 degrees Leo. And what it's going to do is trine with Vesta, which is at 4 to 5 degrees Sagittarius, as we see here. And this degree is about the clear perception. And what it is in particular is about the clear perception that comes from having a poised and very wise approach as a result of being able to see into places that the normal sight is not able to see. And another loaded image is the owl, right? The owl was never really a good omen in any indigenous culture, right? It had a very strong message, and there's wisdom that is attached to the owl, but that's because an owl is a predator and it's nocturnal. So not only is it able to see in the dark, it's also able, it's a predator. It has a focus to see in the dark, as opposed to being the prey usually, and being able to see in the dark is like a protective mechanism. The owl is nocturnal and is able to have this very sharp vision in spaces that normally other beings would not be able to see. So the wisdom comes from this ability, right? To see into the darkness, to see into the unconscious. And Vesta is the flame that holds us all together. We really do need this very wise and poised approach right now. And in a trine to the moon today, here, we'll pop back to this one more time just so you can see it. 4 to 5 degrees Leo over here in Sagittarius, this trine will really allow us to tap into something that is a cycle that is beyond just our own immediate sense of self, right? It's the idea that there are elemental forces that are part of planetary evolution that are so much more than just ourselves in this moment in time. And if we can tap into that through our subconscious, through our feelings, through our intuition, it will actually allow us the wisdom approach to see into what actually is happening and to see the much larger cycles at play. But we have to actually be able to we have to actually be able to get to this point, and be kind of like in awe of these larger planetary cycles. It's not just about us. And I think that that is a really important concept to really leave this at, is that it's very easy for us to get caught up in everything that's happening in terms of our own self. And with the moon in Leo, it's very easy to feel like we are the center of it all. It's this particular trine with the moon in Vesta by the end of today that if we've managed to make it through today without burning everything down, we will actually be able to realize that the long view and the much larger perspective and feeling of these forces that are these elemental forces and these cycles of planetary evolution are so much more than just our immediate experience in this lifetime, in this moment. And when we do that, it will give us that wise approach and that poised perspective that will really hold us together and be of service to humanity. Because that's what Vesta, as the flame at the center, really represents. If that goes out, we're screwed, right? And that for an individual and a community. So it's important that we don't apply it all to just us and what and this is what Venus in the fire signs really represent, because it's all about her in that moment, what appeases her desire and her sensibilities and her sensitivity to passion and to creation and transformation and all of those fire element things. But it's going to be very important that we make it by the end of the day and really align with this. And if we can do that, then we'll see everything that we're experiencing right now, especially today, is all part of a plan to get us in alignment with the next leap, the next leap, and especially getting us cleared out for the upcoming eclipse. Because if we are not conscious, and there were many people that still will be, and I remember somebody, I think it was Emily, that was just like, I just want to shake people and just be like, don't take it with you into the next cycle. I totally feel that. I totally feel that. And yes, we want to sometimes shake people, but we have to let people move forward on their own evolutionary path, and be willing to focus on ours and see where they overlap, because they definitely do. That's for sure. But it's not just about us, but we can focus on ourselves, and that will have an impact on everyone else around us, rather than us trying to force anything or push anything. And when we feel like things are unfair, it's so easy to push and to push things that will just accumulate more karma. And we do not want to do that as we're about to embark on this next eclipse. Because what is still around when that eclipse comes into its exact moment is going to come with us over the next 6 months. And that's going to be very difficult if that happens. So I'm really hoping that in my life that the things that came up as distortions are addressed over the weekend, or at least addressed personally. I don't even have to have them addressed with me directly. I just really hope that they are, because we can't take it. We can't take it with us. And that is part of the burning away of this time period, and the phoenix rising, and the emergence out of the eclipse cycle, which is kind of the whole theme of this eclipse cycle and the readings that I'm going to be doing. So speaking of which, I'm going to leave it there in terms of this information. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you value this work and want to subscribe, hit that like button, share, comment. All of those things really do make a difference. If you want to support this work financially, that would be so awesome. You can go to the link for Subscribe Star in the description box below, and you can subscribe to my to my profile for Subscribe Star at $3 a month, and that supports everything that I'm doing right now, and that would be really, really appreciated. And there will be exclusive content that's going to be shifted over to subscribers here very soon. So, and if you're interested in a reading, especially for eclipse season, you can cash in on my latest sale, reading sale, Emergence. It is a 90-minute recorded astrology reading for your chart with the eclipse cycles, and we go on a journey through the next 6 months and what that's going to look like for you based on your natal and your progressed chart. So that's something that you can email me directly to in order to book, or you can go to catalystenergies.net, scroll down, go to the services tab, scroll down, and just fill out the form there. And if you're not on the email list, that's a great way to get on the email list and then just respond to me directly when I have these reading sales or any other offerings that I let people know through the email list. So you can also connect on social media through Telegram and Facebook. That's in the description box below. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Try not to burn it all down. Try to use the fire energy constructively for what it is meant to. It's okay to feel confident. It's okay to be sure of yourself. It's okay to express who you are. We don't want to use that as a weapon based on the meaning that we've had in the past, right? It's okay to use that momentum to move us forward, but to remember that we're still really here with this North Node in Gemini, and we want to be open to receive that which we have took the step to explore about ourselves and our own consciousness. And that is going to be more impactful in the long run than anything that we may force into our awareness or somebody else's experience. And it's very tempting to do that when things feel unbalanced or unfair. And there are very specific things that you can do that are right in front of you if you need to address them. And a moon in Leo can really help with that too, for you to feel confident and express yourself and who you are. But also too, like I said, use it as a tool. It doesn't need to be a weapon. And if things are uncomfortable and you feel like you want to be a petulant child, just remember what I've been saying. And know that that is going to be karma that you take with you into the next eclipse. And there's no room for it. There absolutely isn't. And so it's going to be, December is going to be an interesting time. And geez, Thanksgiving Day here in the U.S., you know how it goes. It's so contentious in so many ways, right? It's so contentious. So I am at the very least curious and a little kind of on edge about how things will go, but I trust myself at least. And I at least see like as much of the bigger picture as I can about what's going on right now. And ultimately my compassion and my love for people is not going to be overshadowed by some sort of sense of retribution or revenge. Ooh, that's going to be big. Retribution and revenge. It's going to be very big. We got to know the difference. We really do. Like I said, we can't take karma with us in the next cycle. We really can't. So it's important that we acknowledge that. So I love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. I truly, truly appreciate each and every one of you. So have a great Thanksgiving if you're here in the U.S. And if you are not into that holiday and you find that to be offensive or an affront to you, that's okay too. Whatever you end up doing, just be thankful for it, I would say, and show gratitude for whatever is a blessing in your life. And this is the best way to move forward. And we'll be together on Friday. I'll do the weekly astrology and we'll do all signs again. It sounded like that went over really well. So we'll do that again. I love you guys and I can't say it enough. And I'll see you next time. Have a great day. God bless you. Bye.